The 2025 Australian federal election is shaping up to be one of the most consequential in recent memory. Australians are grappling with a cost of living crisis that has become the defining issue of this election. From soaring grocery bills to exorbitant rents, the economic anxieties of everyday Australians are palpable. This is particularly true for younger generations, who face the daunting prospect of a future where home ownership seems increasingly out of reach. Part of this is due to Liberal Party blocking in the upper house government's proposal. The political party that can convince voters they have the best solutions to these pressing economic challenges will likely determine the outcome of this election. Albany's government have a plan for the nation and its future. The cost of living crisis is not merely about numbers on a spreadsheet for Peter Dutton. It's about the erosion of a fundamental Australian aspiration, a fair go. For decades, Australians have prided themselves on a society where hard work translated into a decent standard of living. But the economy was racked by previous Liberal government. However, the current economic climate has shaken this belief to its core. The rising cost of essentials like food, energy and housing has outpaced wage growth, leaving many Australians feeling like they are working harder but falling further behind. Unchecked inflation by RBA is the result of this. This sense of economic insecurity has fueled a deep sense of frustration and disillusionment, particularly among those who feel left behind by the political establishment. Adding to the economic anxieties is the issue of housing affordability. This the effect of Liberal government undoing of education in TAFE, the vocational sector. Australia's property market, particularly in major cities, has become increasingly inaccessible for many, with soaring house prices and stagnant wage growth creating a perfect storm of unaffordability. This has led to a growing number of Australians, including older generations, facing the prospect of renting for life or even homelessness. The dream of home ownership, once a cornerstone of the Australian identity, now feels like an impossible dream for many. While Liberal Party is interested in serving high end of the town and lower and middle class are left to struggle, the political stakes of this election could not be higher. The incumbent Labor government, led by Prime Minister Anthony Albanese, is hoping to secure a second term. However, they face a formidable challenge from the opposition Liberal National Coalition, led by Peter Dutton. The coalition has seized on the cost of living crisis, blaming Labor's economic policies for the pain being felt by Australian households. They have promised tax cuts and other measures aimed at easing the financial burden on families. However, Labor argues that the coalition's plans are irresponsible and would only benefit the wealthy at the expense of essential services. With the election just months away, both sides are locked in a fierce battle for the hearts and minds of Australian voters. The Reserve Bank of Australia, tasked with maintaining financial stability, has found itself thrust into the centre of this political storm. The RBA's recent policies, particularly its decision to hold interest rates steady for an extended period, have come under intense scrutiny. Critics argue that this inaction contributed to the initial surge in inflation as the economy was flooded with cheap credit. The RBA, however, maintains that its decisions were necessary to support the economy through the unprecedented challenges of the COVID-19 pandemic. The RBA's handling of interest rates has become a political football, with the opposition accusing the government of mishandling the economy. The government, in turn, argues that it has limited control over the independent central bank. This tension highlights the delicate balance the RBA must strike between its mandate to control inflation and the political realities of an election year. The RBA's every move is now being watched closely, as its decisions could have a significant impact on the outcome of the election. The RBA's dilemma is further complicated by the global economic outlook. The ongoing war in Ukraine, coupled with supply chain disruptions and rising energy prices, has created a volatile and uncertain global economic environment. These external factors have put upward pressure on inflation in Australia, making the RBA's task of taming inflation even more challenging. The RBA must now carefully calibrate its monetary policy to avoid stifling economic growth while also keeping inflation in check. The political pressure on the RBA is unlikely to abate anytime soon. As the election draws nearer, both sides of politics will be looking to exploit any perceived misstep by the central bank. The RBA's independence is crucial for its credibility, but it cannot operate in a political vacuum. It must navigate the treacherous waters of an election year with caution and prudence, as its decisions will have profound implications for the Australian economy and the outcome of the election. The Albanese government, in response to the cost of living crisis, has implemented a range of fiscal policies aimed at easing the burden on households. These measures include direct cash payments to low and middle-income earners, tax rebates, and increased subsidies for essential services like childcare and healthcare. The government argues that these targeted measures provide much-needed relief to those who need it most, while also stimulating economic activity. However, the government's fiscal policies have not been without their critics. The opposition has accused the government of reckless spending, arguing that these measures will only fuel inflation further. They argue that the government should instead focus on cutting taxes and reducing government spending to ease the pressure on household budgets. This ideological battle over the role of government intervention in the economy is a recurring theme in Australian politics, and the current debate is a prime example of this ongoing tension. The government's decision to introduce a windfall tax on the profits of energy companies has been particularly controversial. The government argues that this measure is necessary to ensure that the energy companies, which have benefited from soaring global energy prices, contribute their fair share to supporting Australian households struggling with rising energy bills. However, the opposition and some industry groups have criticised the tax, arguing that it will discourage investment in the energy sector and ultimately lead to higher energy prices in the long run. The debate over the government's fiscal policies is likely to intensify as the election approaches. Both sides will continue to use the issue of the cost of living as a political weapon, accusing the other of being out of touch with the struggles of ordinary Australians. Ultimately, it will be up to the voters who have decided that Albanese Labor government will deliver economic plan they believe will best address their concerns and deliver a more secure and prosperous future.